Welcome to Dialogue. Today we are opening up the books on a true catastrophe, but it's not the global supply chain, and it's not the housing crisis. Though I have to say, it feels just as expensive for anyone trying to navigate it. I'm talking about the dating market crash of the 21st century, a fundamental structural collapse of social exchange where the pursuit of genuine connection has been fundamentally replaced by commerce.
It really is. It's an economic failure that's just disguised as a social phenomenon.
Hmm.
What we're really analyzing here is a system where the traditional, the non-financial parts of courtship.
Things like charisma, shared values.
Exactly. Emotional effort, all of that has been severely devalued. And this devaluation, it's a direct result of external financial pressures being aggressively injected into the social market. The intangible value of human interaction is being completely undercut by the tangible value of money.
And what our sources have done is identify the four central archetypes, the characters, if you will, who aren't. They're not maliciously plotting this collapse, but their collective financial behaviors have just completely distorted modern intimacy. This isn't just about a few individual choices. It's about entire categories of men whose actions have warped the incentives for everyone else. We're talking about the simps, the classic sugar daddies, the successful but often awkward, financially rich but socially poor men, and this might be the biggest surprise, the married men doing what the source material cheekily calls community outreach.
And the core thesis here is robust, and frankly, it's terrifying when you really dig into the implications. These four groups, through their very distinct financial behaviors, are collectively funding, supporting, and just turbocharging the modern transactional economy.
Right.
This covers everything from the big visible platforms like OnlyFans to niche sugar dating sites, and even the often silent expectation of a certain lifestyle provision in what should otherwise be just a standard romantic relationship.
They're turning basic attention into a line item.
Yes. They're converting basic attention, emotional validation, and physical access into a clear, negotiable financial transaction.
Yeah.
And it's that pervasive transactional nature that really forms the basis of our deep dive today.
So settle in, because this conversation is going to be chaotic, tragically insightful, often hilarious, and definitely expensive to the economy of the heart. Our mission is to understand precisely why dating today feels less like seeking a partner and more like, I don't know, navigating a highly inflationary, highly volatile stock market that only seems to crash your personal portfolio. We need to look at the market mechanics and engage critically with how we got here.
Exactly. And I think we need to start at the very bottom layer of the foundation.
Okay, let's unpack this. We'll start with the most foundational layer of this new economy, the essential building block of purchased validation, the rise of the simp.
Indeed. If you picture the dating market as this massive, teetering pyramid built entirely on attention, the simp is the essential, vast, and easily replaceable layer of sand at the very base. They provide the generalized capital flow that's necessary for the market to even exist at all.
We have to define the species first, because the term gets thrown around a lot. We're defining the core archetype, the North American simp. This is the creature known for typing things like, "Good morning, beautiful, you're glowing like the sun," to women he has never met.
Right. Or maybe just exchanged one message with.
Exactly. He's the guy who funds a woman's daily Starbucks habit, not because they're dating, but because he hopes that this small, sustained financial subsidy will eventually lead to some form of recognition. A response, maybe. He fundamentally mistakes a basic compliment for a genuine connection.
And this behavior, it starts as this sort of low-level validation seeking, but it escalates quickly into direct monetary compensation for the absolute bare minimum of interaction. The source material highlights this extreme example. A man tipping a woman $50 just for responding to his message with lol.
$50.
$50. And you have to think about that for a second. That is not payment for a service. It's not for content. It's payment for proximity. It is paying simply to exist in her digital orbit just to be acknowledged in a sea of unread notifications.
It seems completely absurd on the surface, but we have to analyze the simp origin story, because this archetype wasn't always this prevalent. I mean, traditional social interaction was pretty straightforward. You meet someone, you talk, you connect, you spend time, and then you date.
Right.
But the technological shift we went through just shattered the supply and demand curve of attention.
It introduced massive, unprecedented scalability to communication. Overnight, platforms allowed every man to message every woman, everywhere, all the time. This created an immediate, overwhelming glut of low-effort communication on the receiving end. For women, their inboxes.
Oh, wasteland.
A digital wasteland. often containing hundreds of messages with maybe 99% of them saying nothing more creative than hey. The supply of male attention became, for all intents and purposes, infinite.
And that saturation created what the source calls the digital Olympics of desperation. When faced with this grim realization that their low effort hey was just getting instantly buried in an avalanche of other low effort messages, a massive subset of men fundamentally changed their strategy. They made this subconscious calculation. If I can't win with charisma, if I can't stand out with humor, maybe I can just win with cash.
And that strategic pivot, which happened millions of times all at once across dozens of platforms, that is the moment the transactional attention model was truly born. It led to the mass creation of the simp archetype as we know it now.
Yeah.
It's a self-selected group choosing the financial path because they see the social path, the path of emotional intelligence and actual skill as too hard or too competitive or just impossible to win quickly. Money becomes the shortcut.
It's a buffer against social
A
rejection.
very expensive buffer.
Yeah. And here is where it gets really interesting. Simps aren't just isolated, desperate individuals. They function as the foundational layer of demand that fuels the entire, now mainstream sex work culture. They are effectively the unpaid interns or the seed investors of this new economy.
They fulfill a critical and often unnoticed training function. By consistently sending small amounts of money for non-sexual, purely attentional interactions, a compliment, a follow-up text, a response to a story, simps train women to expect money for basic social interaction.
They're monetizing a compliment.
Exactly. They take the value of a compliment, which should be a freely exchanged social good, and they systematically convert it into a financial transaction. They establish the initial price point for validation.
And this action dramatically inflates the perceived value of digital intimacy. They're basically creating value, or at least the perception of monetizable scarcity, where none intrinsically existed before. And critically, this funding provides the initial capital for the transition. Simps fund the early steps from being just a cute girl who posts selfies for fun to someone who realizes she can become a full-blown entrepreneur with a premium Snapchat and a public Cash App link.
They cover the startup costs.
They really do.
And it's crucial to understand the psychology here. The primary motivation, as observed, is proximity. It's proximity to the fantasy. A woman posts something completely mundane, like, I don't know, eating breakfast, and the response is immediate, disproportionate financial validation. OMG queen, eat that gruel, you deserve it, followed by a Cash App notification. The motivation isn't the content. It's a bizarre attempt at acknowledgement.
A momentary, fleeting sense of importance in her digital life. And we see the absurdity principle in full effect here. There's this specific, almost unbelievable observation in the source material where women remark, with a mix of surprise and cynicism, that men will pay for anything.
Anything.
The example they cite, men paying for photos of elbows, is a perfect, humorous illustration of how completely disconnected the transaction has become from what's being exchanged.
Absolutely. When men are consistently willing to pay $50 for lol or for a photo of an elbow, the content is irrelevant. The actual commodity being purchased is access, validation, and that momentary personalized acknowledgement that they exist and matter to this idealized digital figure.
So Simps have basically turned the general availability of the female digital presence into a massive, decentralized, subscription-based economy.
One transaction at a time. They're the market's foot soldiers, generating the daily data that confirms. This model works, and attention can be monetized.
Okay, so that covers the foundational demand and the initial inflation. But if sinks are the foot soldiers confirming attention is monetizable, we have to graduate to the archetypes that formalize the whole pricing structure, the ones who institutionalize the terms, the sugar daddies.
These are, economically speaking, the predecessors. They established the initial concept of transactional relationships as a formal business model. They essentially walked the path so that Simps could run the high-volume routes. But in doing so, they created a clear pricing benchmark that the broader market would then try to replicate. They brought structure to the chaos.
The sugar daddy model is so different from traditional dating because it actively avoids the messiness of emotional fulfillment. It frames the exchange less around connection and more around, well, contract negotiation. The source describes these men as explicitly defining their goal. I don't want a conventional relationship. I want a relationship with options. And those options, crucially, come with a very clear price tag.
They implemented the franchise model of intimacy, if you will. This isn't casual dating. It's a detailed menu of services and provision, usually with fixed or clearly negotiable rates. They normalize core concepts like allowances and, very importantly, PPM rates, pay per meet, as standard operating procedure.
It's the Uber for companionship model.
Truly, the payment structure covers not just the cost of a dinner date, but payment for the recipient's time, payment for their silence about the man's life, payment for just tolerating him for a set number of hours.
And payment for leaving on time.
Yes, discreetly and on time.
And this entire arrangement gets sanitized and wrapped up in that famous, often misleading phrase, "I want something mutually beneficial."
Which is just a polite way of saying, I want a clear transaction without the emotional baggage. And the analysis here really deconstructs this. It's rarely mutual in the way a traditional relationship is, which involves shared emotional investment and reciprocal care.
Right.
The transactional relationship ensures one party benefits financially, and the other party tolerates the separation for the duration of the payment, extracting maximum financial value. It's an arrangement based on clear, defined expectations, not on vulnerability or shared growth.
The moment this model got formalized and popular, it immediately inflicted critical damage on traditional dating dynamics. I mean, before this normalization, vetting a potential partner was centered on intangible questions. Do we vibe? Do we share a sense of humor? Do we connect intellectually?
Do we share values?
Exactly.
Post-sugar daddy normalization, the vetting changes completely. The questions shift dramatically to, what can you do for me? What level of provision can you sustain? What's your minimum monthly budget? Dating transforms from this organic exploration of a shared future into a series of job interviews. Or, as the source notes, expensive tutoring classes for older men who never learned how to flirt.
The currency of connection just shifts from time and emotion to capital, pure and simple. And this immediately creates an intense competition crisis for men who are genuinely looking for a non-transactional partnership. A younger man, maybe in his 20s, he's no longer just competing against his peers. He's competing against established figures who are already wealthy, often way older, and have this huge advantage in resources.
You're suddenly competing against 55-year-old CEOs, men with generational wealth, or men using funds from a previous marriage. The infamous divorce money, which they're now eager to spend lavishly and discreetly. These men own vacation homes.
Right.
So how can a guy who's still paying student loans and saving for a down payment possibly compete? How can you compete against someone who pays a woman's entire monthly rent casually? Like it's nothing more than tipping a bartender. The scale of competition is just unequal. It raises the price floor for everybody.
Which, if we look at it purely through the lens of rational economic choice, makes the decision for women understandable, even if it's cynical. Why would a woman invest emotional labor into dating a 25-year-old who sends a dry text and struggles financially, when a 55-year-old is willing to immediately buy her a new gaming console, a designer purse, or just clear her student debt?
With no emotional pretense.
None.
It is a stark example of market forces just decisively trumping social norms. Women, facing this infinite supply in their inboxes, naturally gravitate toward the highest bidder who offers the fastest, most reliable path to financial security. The source calls this a redistribution of wealth, noting the profound, dark irony that this hyper-capitalistic approach to intimacy achieves a form of wealth distribution that, many governments struggle to achieve through normal means.
The sugar daddy is the first large-scale investor in this whole economy, making the market real and setting the prices sky high. So if simps are the foot soldiers creating demand, and sugar daddies are the franchise founders setting the prices, we now move to the third group, and this one is perhaps the most tragically ironic. The financially rich, but socially poor men.
These men are fascinating because their market distortion is almost entirely accidental. It's a side effect of their professional tunnel vision. They aren't often explicitly looking for a transactional arrangement at first. They're just profoundly unskilled at the social engagement required for a non-transactional one.
Exactly. We're identifying the archetype of the rich, hyper-successful guy who dedicated 80 hours a week for the last 2 decades to his career. He's accumulated massive wealth, but he fundamentally skipped the social skills update patch.
Right?
He's fully upgraded economically, running a high-end operating system in the boardroom, but he is running Windows 95 in the emotional department. He has zero social fluency. He doesn't know how to tease, flirt, build romantic tension.
Or just connect through conversation.
So because of this profound emotional deficit, his immediate solution is to compensate with the one resource he has in abundance: money. Instead of investing time and effort into learning how to build intimacy, which is a slow, difficult process, he opts for the instant gratification of a financial transaction. This is the man who avoids a difficult conversation by wiring money at 2 a.m., believing the financial act resolves the emotional distance.
He uses money as a shield against vulnerability and a shortcut around emotional labor.
And these compensation tactics are what create catastrophic, unsustainable expectations. This is what we can call luxury inflation. I mean, look at the immediate escalation they bring to dating. A normal date for a guy focused on connection might be a charming neighborhood spot, maybe grabbing tacos.
For the financially rich but socially poor man, the baseline expectation is immediately set at the extreme luxury level. We're talking instant trips to Dubai, the Maldives, private helicopter rides, and $800 dinners on a Tuesday. The transaction has to be massive to compensate for the glaring emotional vacancy.
It's the only language they speak.
It is. And the predictable outcome is that these men create a luxury customer, not a girlfriend. And then they express genuine confusion and shock when they get ghosted the moment the trip is over. They paid for the experience, they paid for the company, but they never actually paid for the person.
And what these men inadvertently teach women is a fundamentally distorted and destructive version of chivalry. They establish a new, toxic metric for seriousness. If a man genuinely likes you, he must pay excessively. If he truly values you, he will demonstrate it with unreasonably expensive gifts. This is the man who buys a $4,000 designer handbag just because, establishing a precedent that seriousness is measured solely by the price tag.
Not by the quality of the emotional interaction.
This is the core mechanism of luxury inflation, and it creates a negative externality for the regular man. After spending a week flying first class, staying in five-star resorts, all funded by a man with limitless resources, how is a woman supposed to feel genuine excitement about a simple, authentic invitation like, want to grab tacos?
The entire frame of reference has been skewed. The bar has been set in the stratosphere, making normal, authentic dating feel boring, cheap, and low effort by comparison.
Regular men are just left throwing up their hands, realizing they can't possibly fund the lifestyle that was built by what the source calls the 62-year-old orthodontist over a single weekend.
The social wealth, the charisma, the shared values, the potential for connection of the average man is rendered worthless when the instantaneous financial wealth of the older, socially inept man is so overwhelming.
And the irony here is just profoundly tragic. These men, the venture capitalists of loneliness, are paying an enormous premium for a connection they systematically failed to receive. They've accumulated everything material, yet they lack the fundamental emotional capital for true intimacy. They consistently confuse attention for attraction, validation for connection, and obedience, the willingness to accept the terms for affection. They pay to avoid loneliness, but ultimately remain profoundly isolated.
Which brings us to the fourth and final archetype, the one that operates largely in the shadows, but contributes the highest volume of anonymous, sustained capital that keeps the entire machine lubricated. The married man, the silent whales.
They are the dark matter of this whole economy. They are the top spenders, the high-volume, repeat customers who are driving the algorithms, ensuring transaction volume stays high, and pushing the market rates to unsustainable levels, all while being virtually invisible to the rest of the dating pool.
Their resources are specific and very potent. They have significant disposable income because their primary household expenses are already covered. They have a deep well of guilt. They have intense boredom. And crucially, their paramount desire is absolute discretion. The source suggests that a small percentage of these men possess enough disposable income to fund the rent of dozens of influencers simultaneously.
That flow of anonymous high-ticket capital is what sustains the market's stability.
And their motivation is strictly fast, transactional validation, not actual connection. They're the high-frequency traders in this market. They're not looking to share trauma or find love. They need quick, discrete transactions that resolve their immediate need for novelty while minimizing risk.
Their dynamic is precise. $400 for guaranteed validation, and please leave before my kids wake up.
Exactly. The complexity of a relationship is intolerable. The simplicity of a paid-for transaction is irresistible.
They're the ones booking the last-minute hotels under fake names, buying expensive lingerie that never gets seen by their spouse, and most crucially for the digital economy, hitting renew subscription and sending large tips at 3 a.m. because they can't sleep. They are actively polluting the algorithmic field for single people trying to play by the old rules.
Well, think about the signaling mechanism. While a single man is sending this tentative, low-status signal, maybe a text that just says, "Hey, how are you?" The married man is cutting through all that noise instantly with a high-value signal. $150 for a guaranteed reply and a compliment.
The market responds.
The market, which is driven by financial incentive, responds predictably. The single man gets lost in the noise. The married man instantly receives attention because he attached a high, non-negotiable price tag to a basic commodity, A simple reply.
And this high volume, high value spending by married men artificially and relentlessly inflates the cost of intimacy across the entire market. They inflate attention prices, companionship rates, even the basic value of getting a text back.
This systemic distortion is perhaps the most dangerous element of the whole market crash. The source draws a powerful analogy, comparing it to what hedge funds did to the housing market. A massive external anonymous flow of capital enters the system, drives up prices, and makes the whole commodity unaffordable for average participants who intended to use it for its original purpose.
In one case, the purpose is shelter. In this market, the purpose is genuine, non-transactional connection.
And the silent whales make basic intimacy a luxury commodity unavailable at retail prices.
Okay, we've analyzed the four demand-side archetypes. Now we have to address how their collective actions created this entire market, the wallet wars.
It is absolutely crucial to establish accountability here, based on the clear mechanism detailed in the material. The mainstreaming of sex work culture was not an organic idea born from women collectively deciding, let's monetize male loneliness. It was, strictly speaking, a market reaction to the observable, consistent, and overwhelming financial demand created by men.
Women realized quickly and with brutal economic rationality that the market had fundamentally changed. They realized men will pay for anything. The list is exhaustive. Attention, validation, company, pictures of feet, voice notes, simple texting.
Even just the implication of digital availability. They observed consistent spending behavior across thousands of men and concluded, logically, that this was the new normal.
Men, through their actions, turned virtually every aspect of female interaction, digital or physical, into a purchasable service, a subscription, or a mutually beneficial arrangement. Once men clearly signaled with their wallets that these interactions were for sale, the women, acting as rational economic suppliers, simply created and refined a sophisticated business model to meet that relentless demand.
It was a purely economic response to an economic signal.
Let's state this plainly, because the source is uncompromising on this point. Men are the customers, men are the investors, men are the funding, men are entirely and overwhelmingly the market.
If every man collectively decided to stop paying for attention tomorrow, the material suggests, and this is a staggering claim, the entire sex work economy would suffer a catastrophic liquidity crisis and collapse in 24 hours. The whole system is built on discretionary male spending. But the ecosystem remains robust because there is always a continuous supply of men willing to spend, say, $300 just for the brief validation of being called handsome by a stranger, thereby keeping the market solvent.
It's a closed, destructive economic loop, and we need to map the steps to really grasp how toxic and self-perpetuating it is. We have to trace the causation.
The cycle begins with the Simps. They generate the initial widespread demand for purchased attention and establish the idea that attention is a monetizable commodity.
Then the sugar daddies step in, normalizing explicit payment structures, the allowances and PPM rates, which institutionalizes the transaction and establishes the minimum price floor.
Next, the financially rich but socially poor men enter the market, not only normalizing payment, but drastically upscaling the pricing. They normalize luxury payment, setting impossible baseline lifestyle expectations.
The married men then become the silent, repeat, high-ticket buyers, injecting vast amounts of anonymous, guilt-fueled capital that artificially inflates attention costs and algorithmic signaling.
This collected action forces women, as rational suppliers, to adjust their behavior to the new market reality, where the highest, most reliable incentive is financial, not emotional.
Consequently, sex work culture in all its forms becomes fully mainstream, seeping into and normalizing expectations within general, non-explicit dating.
And then dating ceases to be an act of organic discovery and becomes, almost immediately, a negotiation of terms and provision. Relationships become inherently transactional.
This ultimately leads to mass social confusion, loneliness skyrocketing as people pay for connection but receive only validation, and the whole cycle repeats itself. The demand side, fueled by desperation and cash, never shuts off.
It is, fundamentally, hypercapitalism with extra steps, applied ruthlessly to the sphere of human connection. The result is the dating crisis, defined by profound distrust.
The consequences of this market crash are expensive. They impact every corner of modern social life. Because of this economic distortion, two primary destructive beliefs have become deeply ingrained in people's subconscious expectations.
On one side, due to the constant financial stimulus from these four archetypes, women have been trained to believe that men exist primarily, or perhaps exclusively, to provide resources and fund a lifestyle. Their core value assessment of a man becomes overwhelmingly rooted in financial utility.
On the other side, men have been trained, through purchasing access, to believe that women exist primarily for their consumption, for access to their time or body, for validation that can be obtained with a simple payment. They confuse the temporary compliance bought by money with genuine affection.
The natural social connection, the ability to build trust, share vulnerability, and bond outside of a financial contract is collapsing. Authentic relationships that require effort and time are constantly overshadowed by transactional ones, which are simpler and offer better short-term payoffs for both sides.
Instant validation versus instant financial gain.
The atmosphere becomes one of intense, mutual suspicion. The man wonders if he's being used for his wallet. The woman wonders if he only sees her as a commodity he's purchased. Trust hits an all-time low.
And perhaps the most pervasive consequence for the average person is that crushing feeling that they simply can't afford to date anymore because the baseline price for attention has been so dramatically inflated.
The current market is defined by high inflation, mutual delusion, where people believe a transaction is a relationship, pervasive distrust, ingrained entitlement on both sides, and a dizzying number of short-term, unsustainable situationships. It's just a mess of broken expectations.
So if the analysis is this bleak, what does the source material offer in terms of actual solutions? How do we stop the madness when the market forces feel so overwhelming? There are 4 clear, actionable steps outlined, but they require a significant, painful shift in behavior from both sides.
The first step is squarely aimed at the demand side, primarily at men. The absolute necessity of developing deep boundaries and self-respect. This means actively and consciously stopping the funding of the transactional market. You have to stop paying strangers for basic attention.
Every single time.
Every single time a man throws money at loneliness, whether it's $5 for a like or $5,000 for a trip, it acts as an inflationary pressure on the entire system. This requires men to tolerate rejection and develop emotional resilience rather than buying a shortcut around it.
The second step is directed toward women. The critical need to separate the fantasy lifestyle from reality. The lifestyle being funded by sugar daddies and the financially rich but socially poor men is not average. It is not sustainable within a genuine, non-transactional partnership. A man with a yacht is an outlier, not the expectation.
Right.
A sugar daddy arrangement, while lucrative short-term, is based on utility, not love, and it's not a model for a genuine, emotionally supportive relationship. The curated reality on social media is not what real dating looks like.
Right.
Thirdly, and this is probably the most important one for everyone involved, the desperate need to replace transactional shortcuts with genuine social skills. The transactional market exists because so many people are looking for the quickest, lowest effort route to intimacy or validation. This means consciously reinvesting time in developing actual social intelligence, learning how to handle conflict, improving communications, setting clear boundaries, and relearning the subtle art of flirting and building romantic tension based on personality, not a bank account. If you rely on money to generate attention, you never develop the skills to generate organic connection. You become financially fluent, but socially illiterate. The only way out is skill development. And finally, the fourth solution is just to stop rewarding bad behavior on both sides. Stop giving money for crumbs, the bare minimum of attention. Stop giving validation to people who don't know your name or care about your well-being. Stop giving your attention away when there's nothing in return except an empty, fleeting transaction.
Rewiring the social economy requires a collective conscious refusal to participate in the hyperinflated transactional loop we've detailed today. It requires people to prioritize the long-term, difficult work of building genuine trust over the immediate, easy payoff of a financial exchange.
And that concludes our deep, often painful, but absolutely necessary dive into the ecosystem of simps, sugar daddies, socially inept rich men, and the married men who have all collectively accelerated the modern dating crisis by replacing emotional currency with financial capital.
If we take anything away from this comprehensive analysis, it's this. If you truly want dating to improve and return to a basis of authentic connection, you must stop funding the madness. The power to collapse this transactional market rests entirely with the customer base.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, let us know in the comments what really stood out to you in this conversation, and if there's any related topic or new topic that you would like covered in a future video. But seriously, in the spirit of this deep dive, don't pay us for attention. Just share this deep dive with someone who needs to hear it.